Hi, this is Dr. Stephen Bracci, and I want to welcome you to the Ageless Rage Show, where we discuss our rage about how our healthcare system and our society, when it comes to health, is in disarray, and where we aim to make changes, where we think about it, and we expose and we illustrate, and more importantly, we investigate what it is that's really making us ill. Today I have my esteemed guest, High Voltage. I've known Voltage for many years, and I'm always impressed with her instincts and her knowledge about how it is that our brain chemistry works and why we have these problems. I think she is really a pioneer when it comes to this, because she had the instincts to link this idea of addiction to brain chemistry and sugar. Today's episode is really about sugar and how brain chemistry and how it's really an addictive drug. It should be linked with other drugs. High Voltage is a health and wellness pioneer. She's a best-selling author, a TV personality, and she's helped thousands of people get their energy up and their weight down. She has been featured on numerous TV shows through the decades: Good Morning America, CBS show, Entertainment Tonight, the list goes on and on. High Voltage's illustrious career began actually in the 70s when she partook and owned a spa. And basically, she was a prominent hotel and spa where she originated the empowerment program based on health and wellness and lifestyle, and she called her program Energy Up. It is the only health and wellness childhood obesity program built on the addiction model. So this is not a model based on something superfluous. It's really based on the true science of addiction, and it's related to published medical studies and literature. Welcome today. I want to welcome you. And tell me, Voltage, tell me about your first experiences. You mentioned that when you were going through sobriety in the earliest stages, and you noticed that sugar was triggering some of the same euphoria and same brain chemistry things that you had experienced while taking various drugs. Tell me about that.
Well, if people could see, I have such a big smile on my face, because listening to your introduction, because I've been doing this a very long time, and there was a lot of pushback. And when I said in the 70s, 80s, even through the 90s, that sugar is America's #1 drug. And sugar actually needs to be classified as a drug. That's been a big mission that I've been on. Worked with the Bloomberg administration with that. And doctors and scientists over the years, as I became well known, through the media, especially when I got involved with Kathie, because at the time Kathie had the Today Show, and she really transformed, so much to the fact NBC said, maybe you want to cool it a little. You don't look like the girl next door. You're starting to look like the girlfriend next door. But they just, current media and current mentality don't understand a woman being powerful and strong and looking her best is not a negative. You can be brilliant, you can be sexy, you can be smart, and you can also put yourself together in any way that you choose. Now, you don't have to, but there's nothing wrong with it. So doctors and scientists would say, Voltage, how did you figure this out in the 70s? You're not a doctor, you're not a scientist. And I looked them in the eye and say, no, but I was an addict. So when I got sober from drugs and alcohol, the hotel that I took over, I'd actually gone there as a guest and had been there over 2 months, and the owner's wife said, did you ever think of doing this, for a living? I had married into a very wealthy family, a real estate family, and I'd never thought of doing anything. So, but once I got sober, there's something happened down there. I'm not saying lightning struck, but something happened that I just lifted above. And the things that I loved to do and that I thought were fun and glamorous no longer appealed to me. So I needed to get out, but so many women that, marry into enormous money, they don't come from it, they get trapped. So I was trapped. And I'm looking around, I said, well, I don't like being trapped, I want trimmings, So I said, the owner's wife, you help me get settled, help me walk away, I'll walk away, from the marriage and all of that. And that happened, and I stayed there for 3 years and had maybe 500 different people to play with. Now, the registered dietitian and I were constantly boom, boom, you know. I mean, I caught her putting salt in the coffee because it makes it better or something, she thought. I mean, I just recognized very early, because when my system was clear, my brain chemistry was clear, if I would eat anything with sugar, I recognized I had the exact same reaction in the brain. Like, it turns a switch on and there's no off switch. People do not understand this. It literally is not their fault that they cannot stop eating if they have the kind of brain chemistry that is triggered by sugar. It is that simple. And everybody's like, moderation is the key to success. They don't say that in AA. I mean, if you have been sober for a year and you're visiting your family, they're not going to say, oh, it's New Year's Eve, you got to have a little champagne.
No.
But if you go home after being off sugar X amount, oh, come on, a little bite isn't going to hurt. It's so-and-so's birthday, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was not understood. It's getting better, much, much better. My program is actually built on Alcoholics Anonymous, but I tweaked it to suit certain things that I, didn't necessarily work the same with me, because forgiveness, gratitude is huge. Affirmations is a huge part of our program. Like when we're working out, it's like, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm powerful. It's almost like a rap concert,
So you went from basically starting out with the chemical-induced euphoria, and then you analyzed that, and then you transformed that into the dance floor kind of euphoria, and then you associated those two euphorias with the sugar thing. But sugar is something that we can get any day, all day long. It's
absolutely.
It's not like we have to wait till Saturday night for the dance floor, and it's not like we have to go to our drug dealer and buy it. It's in every cabinet, it's in every store, it's in everywhere we go. We can't go to a train station or bus stop. We can't go anywhere without having access to this drug. It's everywhere.
Duh, makes me crazy. I know, seriously.
It's everywhere.
That's
We
why
claim
when
it.
you told me the name of what you're going to be doing, and you use the word rage, because rage has always had kind of a negative connotation. This is positive rage.
It is positive rage.
Because
I'm enraged. I'm enraged because we've normalized something so to the point, and it's affecting our health so badly, and we have epidemic of obesity and type 2 diabetes and early onset heart disease, and actually a lot of the cancers that we have are associated with this drug. The list goes on, and we're not doing anything to normalize. We're normalizing that, but what we're saying is we need more research, we need more pills, we need more procedures, we need to go and have more checkups. But the reality is that the checkup, we need to have a checkup with ourselves, what we're doing in our lives.
Because the entire medical system, their model is, treating disease. It's not preventing it.
Correct.
And,
Correct.
You're against its powerful forces. As I said, because I recognized this so long ago, and have just been so blessed to have been put in positions of power, or just power, because of who I'm working with, and then
Right.
the effect that I would have on them,
Right.
that, I was able to do and say things that normally, were like laughed at almost. 'Cause
Right, so-
it's not just sugar. Flour, sugar, and salt used to be,
Absolutely, absolutely. It's highly refined carbohydrates and sugar.
white powders.
Correct, correct.
what
I know
the
for
drug-
myself, if you don't have the ultimate sugar, which is a gummy bear or a peppermint patty,
Yep.
then the next best thing is a bagel or a chip or a white pasta or white bread or
Absolutely.
a toast with jam on it. You find something as a substitute, and I would imagine that most of the people who are addicts, if they can't get their drug of choice, they choose another one, right?
And
They
they're
have
doing
another
it
one.
blindly because they don't eat. Many people really, most people have heard that sugar is a drug. They might not do anything about it, but they've heard it. They don't realize the minute you eat white rice, flour, blah, blah.
Right.
The minute it goes in your mouth, your brain handles it the
Correct.
same way as if you took sugar.
Correct.
That is not as commonly recognized. And we're not fighting obesity. We have adjusted to obesity.
Right.
People are not walking, they're waddling. And it's been embraced on such a level if you're really fit. Like, people will look at you, are you okay? Somehow it's like the Twilight Zone. We woke up and we're living in a society, America, land of the free. We've been programmed, kids. We've been played. And Okay, I believe in capitalism. I mean, their job is to sell and make money, okay? But this is a free country. Nobody's got a gun at your head to do it.
Right, but we have to change the narrative, because even though they're selling it, we have to put some disclaimer on there that this
Absolutely,
is not
no.
necessarily the best thing.
Like cigarettes.
We put disclaimers on cigarettes. We stop cigarette ads. We're trying to stop cigarette ads for children.
Right.
We have signs in bars that say women shouldn't drink when they're pregnant. We have
Right.
systems, but we don't really have a system that says, okay, well, maybe we should rethink all of the sugar. Maybe we should rethink the way we sell kids all these soft drinks and all of these things.
Go into the schools, because when we created, Energy Up, the actual name of my 501c3 is UVA, which stands for Energy Up Voltage Approved. Kind of like the Good Housekeeping seal of approval, but you can't buy it. I mean, it has to really be the real deal. How can you really educate kids to make this transition when they go into the cafeteria and it's all, sugar and juice, which is Coca-Cola, basically? When they want to make money, they sell candy. I mean, we actually ran programs and we didn't do that.
So when I was in medical school, I won an award to go to an Indian reservation, and
You do a sweat lodge thing?
it was in South Dakota, and I was studying gestational diabetes, which is the diabetes that women get during pregnancy. And the thing that really struck me is all of this. I was studying all this, but where I was going to the food was the cafeteria, was where everybody else ate, and it was all government-approved foods. But the government-approved foods were the culprit.
Right.
And I was studying
Frightening.
something. I was getting government money to study something, but the government food was the real problem.
Right.
And I was just,
You're like,
I was blown away, because really the only foods that they could get were ultra-processed foods. There was breakfast cereals, there was bagels, there was chips, there was all of these things, pretzels, all of these foods that we were in large supply. And here I am studying something when really the problem isn't in the doctors or the medicine, it's in the drugs. I'm in a hospital establishment, but the hospital's feeding it. It was really an epiphany. So tell me, Voltage, what do you think is the biggest misconception and misunderstanding when discussing food as a drug?
well, it's hard for a person who does not live it or has not studied it, or, you and I are so passionate about it. I mean, it's just what we think about all the time. But to tell, sugar is a drug, processed foods are a drug because it's everywhere, it frightens people. Because if this is true in their minds, like subliminally, they're starting to understand they've been played. I mean, this is a huge issue.
It is.
So if this is so dangerous, as you
Right,
say,
right.
well, then how can it be everywhere? How can it be in the schools?
Right.
That's a big question. How can it be? Because we're in a capitalistic society that, runs on the engine of making money. All these foods make money. All these, packaged things are huge. And the laws in Congress have, I know you're aware, but I doubt most people are aware. There are so many additives and colorings and flavors that are illegal in other countries.
I agree.
They're only legal in
And this-
America.
I-
How can that be?
Well, we have very open narratives about addictions in this country, about certain things. We know that gambling can be an addiction. We know that drugs obviously can be an addiction, alcohol. But when we talk about sugar and those same things, we get a lot of pushback.
Well, of
Because
course.
People think of that as, but my kids eat sugar. Everybody eats sugar. It's
That's
everywhere.
impossible.
It's impossible. Why would this is a normal thing. But this
It
is only
is,
in
no.
the recent existence. Man didn't have all this sugar years ago. Didn't have all these refined sugars. They found sugar cane and they basically figured out a way to process it, and then it became a ubiquitous drug everywhere. It's all over.
I would say to anyone who has a real interest in this, there was a book that came out in the 70s called Sugar Blues. That was my Bible. It's really what got me going. Because when I was at the hotel, that's when I was really like absorbing everything and just, reprogramming my brain. And Sugar Blues, as I said, came out in the 70s and tells the history. Sugar was classified as a drug. It was illegal like back in the 1600s, 1700s. I mean, it tells the story of how it went being classified with cocaine and heroin, and how it became accepted, kind of by money and by the world. So there's actually a book that explains that part. So that's like a kickstart for a person to start realizing what's really going on, and it's been going on a very long time. But then the next question is, well, if we're in a free country, how can, it's very confusing to the average person. But it's good to be in a free country because you can claim your power back. You can take it back.
You can.
Educate yourself.
You can.
And live truly a fit, fabulous, fierce life forever. The 4 F's, literally. Fit, fab, fierce, forever, or as long as we stay on this planet. And that part is simple. Once you detox the first time, if you dive in, if you don't cleanse your palate, you cannot change. Because you've got to change naturally what you like.
I agree.
You
I
see?
agree. So basically, my theory on this is that by continuously engaging in high fructose sugars and high carbohydrate diets, we just reinforce this brain chemistry thing.
Absolutely.
And we're never going to be able to adjust it until we get away from that cycle and that loop of feedback.
Absolutely.
Of reinforcement, like we would with drugs or alcohol. You're never really going to free yourself because you can never adjust the drug down to a low levels and manage it. That's what you always told me. I have a little bit of sugar. So what you're doing is you're managing your addiction.
Exactly.
You're managing it.
And anybody knows.
I won't have that York peppermint, though, two York peppermints. I'm just going to have one York peppermint patty.
And you might be able to control it for a couple of days, but sooner or later, it's just like alcohol. You're going to be blacked out.
Well, the problem is like we talked about, is that if you substitute and you say, I'm not having pure sugar, then you revert to the next best thing, which is pure carbohydrates.
Exactly.
Or pure bagel chips or whatever it is, whatever your drug of choice. Getting back to this addiction thing, there was a good study recently that talked about people sleeping and how highly processed carbohydrates, which is sugar essentially, can affect your sleep in the afternoon and evening, be more disruptive to your sleep than alcohol. So we all know that alcohol is extremely disruptive to our sleep, but we never thought that, wow, maybe this massive load of carbohydrates at dinner time that's not such a good thing for our sleep.
You read it because you love to read studies. You look for them. And you also understand who paid for the study, because, a lot of people read studies that were, designed to disinform you. It's not to inform, it's disinform.
Right, well, we knew this from years ago with the tobacco companies.
When they got caught.
They did studies, and they were always talking.
You can do stand-up. Remember those guys when they were all talking before Congress and 60 Minutes? That's the first time, because I never realized what the media really was. And back then, over that tobacco thing, there was actually a movie done on it. One of the big producers actually quit because they pulled what they found out. BlackRock had to pull it because, they found that cigarettes are addictive and all the negative stuff. And the show 60 Minutes made the show, and then when the lawyers saw it, they said, "Oh, no!" And that was the first time they actually ever pulled a story. I mean, that was huge.
Huge.
And that was the light that kind of went on.
That's the whole objective of this podcast, is investigate and ask the questions, because as a physician, I certainly don't have all the answers. I don't. I admit that. None of us do.
Exactly.
But we have a lot of good questions. And with continuous use of good questions, I think we can get to better answers. We need better answers. Better.
And you fine-tune your lifestyle. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I'm the fitness person also, but the most unique, efficient way to work out, you have really guided me on. You do that with a lot of things. That's why we
work
love
together.
speaking,
Right.
because if you respect somebody, I don't question things you say. But some people need to know the science. When somebody would question me about certain things, they wanted me to rattle off many of the things that you can rattle off because you're a doctor, you're a scientist, you just know those
Right,
things.
and I have life experiences
Yes.
myself.
Well, you're a
like
seeker.
You yourself, how did you come up with this? Because you were the test subject. You
Exactly.
were on drugs. You were on the dance floor. Then you say, okay, this is all the same stuff. I mean, I pride myself with being a lifelong exerciser, but I also admit that I'm a lifelong sugar addict. I was such a sugar addict that if we had guests over for dinner and we had dessert and I woke up in the morning, you know, alcoholics would go for the alcohol in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw the cookies. I saw chocolate chip cookies in the morning. I wouldn't be eating breakfast. I'd go for the
Yeah,
cookies.
yeah.
I couldn't, they were on the counter. I would be going for those. I wouldn't go to open the counter and get fruits, or I wouldn't go in the refrigerator and get fruits and yogurt or whatever I should be
Exactly.
eating. I'd be eating that chocolate chip cookie.
Mindlessly.
And so the thing is because I exercised and I wasn't obese, it was sort of like unspoken, it was normalized. And I think people who have drinking problems, they normalize it too because they have enough that they're functional. I was a functional sugarholic.
You were a functioning
Functional
sugar addict.
Sugar addict, and because because I did everything else pretty much okay, I had enough fruits and vegetables, I was within the realm of normal. Didn't need medications, but certainly I was going down a bad pathway.
And
I was
you were
suffering from
aware of it.
I was aware of it.
It's bad.
And once I got off that sugar as a drug, not only do I have a better attitude, I have, like what you always discussed, is this idea that I no longer have the cravings. I no longer look at that as something I need to have. I wake up in the morning and I see chocolate chip cookies. I don't have a sense that I don't even care about that. To me, that's like having rocks on the table. It's like having stones. I don't really care to touch the stones. I don't care to touch the cookies because I don't have the brain chemistry's not there. And I would imagine that, would you say that's the same for people who are on drugs? They don't have those cravings at a certain point?
Oh, absolutely. What you're describing, because most people that, know me this way, it's hard for them to understand what a food addict I was. I mean, I was bulimic for years, would throw up 10, 20 times a day, anorexic. I mean, we did a thing, chewing and spitting it out. That was in this maybe late 60s. I mean, I come from, there's a lot of obesity that runs in my family. And I actually broke that cycle because, this runs in the family, type 2 diabetes. What runs in the family is the way they eat and the way they live.
That's the commonality.
You break away from that and you can create,
Right.
you can
Right.
build your own system that is
Correct.
independent of
Correct.
that.
So we know, we all know that people have predispositions due to certain genes that they're born with.
You don't have to turn them on.
But the majority of our issues are not the genes we're born with. It's the lifestyle that we're adapting to. We're
Oh.
trying to adapt to, adjusting to.
Because it's a standard American diet.
But it doesn't serve anybody to say, okay, well, these are the things that you can do to prevent type 2 diabetes. These are the type of things you could do with your children, with your family. But we don't have that narrative.
No, they want you to control your insulin.
Well, the pharmaceutical companies
of course.
all love to preface their selling of their drug and their advertisement when diet and exercise don't work.
No,
That's their slogan, really, when diet
didn't
and
know that.
exercise don't work.
Well, my slogan is the standard American diet. They're telling the truth because it's sad.
It is sad.
SAD. But back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, because this is a key. You can't make that transformation unless you commit to cleansing your palate. That means going for at least 2 or 3 days, not a long time, just consuming nothing with just vegetables, fruit, no additives at all. You've got it, because salt and processed foods deaden your taste buds.
They do.
And if you
They
don't
do.
have it, everything tastes ugly.
So my personal experience is I kept track of this mentally, and when I went off sugar, it took me about 6 weeks. About 5 weeks I was still craving the sugar, and the 6th week I began to realize, wait a second, I don't feel like I want this. Because we have a sense that this is just intrinsic, but it really is a brain chemistry thing.
But the good news is you can change that. It doesn't matter where you are today. If you make that commitment, you can change what you like. You can change. I reprogrammed myself. I used to love this, like cinnamon buns, cookies, like even the smell, When I smell that stuff now,
You get sick.
It's so funny because people that have been out with me, like, will walk by a bakery, so all of a sudden I go, oh, I got to get out of here. the smell is making me sick. And they look, what? How can that make you sick? I retrained myself consciously. I worked on that. And I kept connecting that kind of smell with dog crap, or like horrible smells. And after a while, your brain will believe, well, they're computers. Whatever you feed it, it runs on.
It runs on it.
And you can completely
that's
program.
That's a big subject that I'm convinced of that nobody really understands, is that we have something that is intrinsic to our body called our microbiome, which is all of our natural living organisms in our gut. And the way we feed ourselves influences how that develops and what grows in our gut. And that affects not only our gut, but our whole metabolism, our whole body. And the more we change that and alter that, the more we're going to have inflammation and we're going to have disease and sickness. And this goes back to my main thing, is that we are living longer with disease and disability than any time in history. And so I went into my medical training thinking that I would love to be able to treat disability, but I realized it's really not the problem of treating it. Really, we should be avoiding the disability, and we're embracing it, and that's a real problem, because people are suffering for longer now than they ever were in the history of mankind, in my opinion.
Oh, and end of life is turned into a very ugly situation.
It's a long situation.
And it's not just the person, trust me, because I'm in it right now. My
Right.
mom's 94, my father's
Right.
95. The whole family is affected, not even realizing what's going on. Like, I know 99-year-old people that, are up and doing things. I mean, they're not bedbound, and in pain 24 hours a day, under hospice. I mean, that's become normal.
Right.
And the good news is age, and I love to say this, and I think it kind of says a lot, aging is not optional, but rusting and rotting to death is optional.
It
And
is.
what's happening
It is.
people that live that long, they're so toxic from the lifestyle, the body just can't handle anything anymore. I mean,
I
they're
agree.
staying
I
alive,
agree.
but my parents are really gone. They don't.
Right. It's all related.
It's horrible.
It's horrible.
To watch and to see. And if that doesn't wake people up to want to make a change, we're at a place in history, I believe, because everything is so obvious now. You can see it. I mean, the average woman, I think, is 5'4" and 178 pounds. That's average. That's close to obesity, not just being overweight. I mean, and that's normal.
And what we're doing is, we're not criticizing the people. We're
No.
criticizing the system that makes
Feeds that.
That feeds that.
That feeds
because
that.
Obviously these are the victims.
They're
and
victims.
We are trying to discuss the victimizers. We're trying to say what is in our system, what is in our society that enables this and engages this,
And
and
feeds it.
embraces it, and makes it happen, and normalizes it.
It drives it.
And it drives it, and that's the part that gives me rage.
Ugh.
It's not the people themselves, because
No.
I feel saddened to see the disability and the despair and all of the
course.
problems. I feel terrible when I see it.
You're not fat shaming.
I'm not.
By any means.
No.
Neither am I,
No.
by any means. But you don't want people to have to, and it's interesting, I didn't think about this really before, but though they are victims.
They are
our whole
victims. They are
narrative
victims.
now is to be a victim about things that you're really not a victim to. The victims are the people consuming what is being fed to them as
Correct.
normal by our
Correct.
by our media.
Correct.
But you don't have to listen. I always go, you can take your power back. And that's what I love what you're doing, because you have this ability to just come up with like one or two liners to make a point that it just comes through.
Thank you so much, Voltage. This was wonderful. You can follow us continuously on Spotify, Instagram, and please join us on the upcoming episodes.
Energy up. Woo!